Hello, this is Phelps with Refuge, here to talk about gauze. So this is something that there's a wide range of different types, and some of them might be a mystery to you, and so hopefully I can provide a little bit of clarity on that, right? I'm going to start here at our kind of lowest end. Now you can get simple loose gauze at Walmart or any kind of drugstore or anything like that. So this is typically going to be a little bit thinner, right, than some of your compressed gauzes. In fact, shouldn't have thrown that package away. Gauze uses the same type of rating typically as toilet paper. So you can determine the thickness by the ply. So this is two ply, right? So there are two layers to this and it's woven together. You can, if you probably see as I stretch it, how it comes apart. It's woven, right? Woven gauze. So this can be very good and useful for when you are packing a wound. We have our wonderful focus wound cube here. It has a variety of different wounds on here. I'm going to focus on this one because it has a small entry and then a larger cavity inside of that, right? So this might be easier to pack into a wound that has a small entrance wound or a small exterior. Now you're always kind of going to tear the exterior for any kind of like gunshot wound or anything like that. But maybe this is a knife wound that doesn't have a large entrance wound and you need something thinner to more easily press into that. So that's our kind of what I call loose gauze, right? So this is a roll of woven gauze. There's other style, which is gauze pads, right? So this one is specifically listed as an abdominal pad. It's very absorbent. And this is essentially what you would use for any kind of large abdominal injury, as well as potentially even to stuff into a much larger wound, like a blast type wound, or to cover a blast type wound. You'll notice there's this blue stripe through the middle of this. That will register on x-rays. So that if I'm taking these and someone who is got a massive open leg wound or something of that nature, and I'm pressing these in to pack that, that's easy to recognize. Or if someone's using it to clean out and one of them gets left in there, because there's chaos sometimes involved in that, when you're cleaning out a wound, then that can be identified. But you see that roughly the size, it's coming in all different sizes and shapes, but it's very thick and it's kind of got a gauze pad inside of this pouch, which keeps it all together. Right? And that can be applied over an injury like something like that for a lighter bleed, but if it is a severe, you may ball up some of it, press it into that wound, and you can see this wound is kind of an open channel. So packing that with this would be very quick and efficient, and then I could wrap over it to maintain pressure. Then we have our compressed gauzes, okay? And these come in two basic varieties, which is either rolled, okay? And so you open these up, they are vacuum packed, and so you want to try to maintain that integrity of that package if you can. If they puff out, they're not immediately bad, but you need to probably use them sooner rather than later and consider replacing them. And so this gauze in particular is 6 ply. So you're going to see a difference in this thickness. Once it comes out, it's compressed into a little brick, even though this is a roll of gauze, okay? This one is Z-fold, we'll get to that in a second, but this is a roll of gauze. So I'm going to bend and flex this around in order to fluff it up essentially. See how it's kind of fluffing up there? I find the end of it here and I pull this out. Now you can see the difference in the thickness of these two gauze, right? Pretty easily. This is going to be much more difficult to pack into a small wound like that. But other times, maybe a larger wound like this, it's very, very efficient to be able to fill that wound quickly with a very thick gauze. And again, you see, even though it was compressed in a brick, it is a roll of gauze. Some people can have a hard time maintaining control of this roll while they're wound packing. So once I've driven that in, I'm going to maintain pressure nonstop. We have videos on wound packing, so I'm going to drive this in, keep going. Well, as I do, I have to pull out more slack, and this rolling, some people can lose their grip on that. Under stress especially, you lose some dexterity. The other option for compressed gauze typically is Z-fold, which I am a very large fan of. This one is, again, 6-ply. So we're dealing with the same thickness here in these two. Same philosophy, flex it, fluff it a little bit, find the edge, right here. But it has a Z-fold to it. It just goes back and forth, okay? So I can hold this in my hand while I'm packing that wound and just pull, and it just unfolds, almost like a magic deck of cards, if you ever had one of those when you were a kid. And again, very thick and dense, so you can see how thick that is. It's a large contrast to the oftentimes cheaper gauze that you can find readily available at most drugstores, Walmart, etc. Then we get into the range of what we call hemostatically impregnated gauze. Okay, now get away from the granules, right? If those are an old method, you want your hemostatic agent impregnated in the gauze, or sponge, perhaps, if you're into that. This is a roll, and this is your standard quick clot. There's a variety of different brands that make this, right? This one is rolled, and you can tell the texture on this. I'm not sure how well it shows up on the camera here, but you can tell that it's the same thickness as this gauze, but it's got a sheen to it. It's a little smoother, and it's definitely not as coarse as this, but even this has like that texture of the woven gauze material. This is a little bit sleeker. Still holds, still gauze. It just has that hemostatic agent impregnated in it. This is what you're going to want to start with if you have it available and you're choosing to use it. You want to start with this gauze at the source of the bleeding so that that agent can react with the blood and help create a clot. Now, wound packing works, period, just using regular gauze, just like this compressed roll gauze or this loose rolled gauze. Wound packing works. Hemostatic impregnated gauze helps basically provide a margin for error. If you are not packing that wound perfectly, that agent will help you create that clot. So that is the standard quick clot, and then we also have what is affectionately called combat gauze, right? And this is a Z-fold variety of the same thing. So it's just like that other Z-fold gauze here, right? Except for this one folds widthwise instead of lengthwise, and you see that it has this blue band through it. Again, this is so that you drive this to the source of the bleeding, and it helps stop that bleeding, create a clot. Well, when they are going to treat this injury rather than just render aid to it, the doctor is trying to treat it, they have to get all of the gauze out. It's called debridement. They have to cleanse that wound before they start working on it. And so being able to throw them under that casualty under an x-ray and see this blue stripe shows up very vivid under an x-ray so that they can quickly assess if they have gotten it all out and can proceed with a treatment, okay? And again, this has this kind of slick feel to it, but it will do its job. Again, we're not trying to absorb blood, okay? We are trying to maintain pressure with the gauze. The gauze fills the cavity of the wound to maintain pressure on the side of the bleeding so that a clot can begin to form and we can stop that bleeding. So this is the Z-fold combat gauze. Again, there are other manufacturers, but they're all very similar in this regard. This is basically how they break down. You have your loose, commonly available gauze. You have your compressed gauze, both in rolled and Z-fold form. You have your pads of all different varieties, sizes, and shapes. And you have your standard rolled combat gauze, hemostatically impregnated, and you have your Z-fold combat gauze, hemostatically impregnated. Now you'll notice this one does not have that blue stripe, although most hemostatically impregnated gauzes do have this magnetically reactive stripe in them. However, as you see in this, some non-hemostatic agent gauze have it as well, so that is not a tried and true indicator of that, but it's something to be aware of. All right, again, this is Phelps, Salt Peacekeeper Online, here with Refuge. hopefully educating you on a thing, and I hope you enjoyed it and learned a lot. Stay blessed.